Greetings and salutations. Welcome once again to the Agora, a forum to examine the unexamined life or whatever the heck we decide to throw together on the drive-in.
No,
Yes.
we did not just throw it together on the drive.
Maybe you didn't. I was typing as I was. Did I say typing? I meant thinking quietly in my head with both hands on the wheel.
Oh man,
Voice typing.
Man. Wow, typing in his car. That's an admission right there.
It's not a crime if you don't get caught.
Wait, what?
Hey, we're in phase 2 now. You're allowed to type in your car, right? Isn't that one of the?
Does a tree make? No one's if it falls in the woods, if no one's there to hear it.
Darn you and your ancient wisdom.
Well, no, I think that's the same question. Like, is it a crime if you don't get caught?
I was not typing I was mentally putting this together, all right? Typing in my brain. For those of you who haven't joined us in the past, we are the place where we talk about all the things you might want to but are afraid of, because we, as a collective, believe that the questions of faith, ethics, morality, and society are too important to be solved through memes on Facebook or celebrity rants on Instagram, no matter how compelling and passionate they might be. We live in a world that makes it easier every day to avoid anybody we might disagree with. And we live in a world where you can literally pick and choose what information you want to receive, who you want to associate with, and what you want to be known as. And this eliminates the possibility to actually dialogue with those you might disagree with, which we believe is where true progress and true betterment actually happens. So that's why we have the pleasure of doing what we do. I, once again, am Garrett. I'm here with my equally great and amazing partner, Richard. We're joined today by our special guest, Dwayne Hilty of the Salem Leadership Foundation is here to talk about our topic of the day, our question of how do we help without hurting. So, Dwayne, do you just want to share a little background info about yourself for our adoring audience?
I do. I didn't know when to start speaking, right? Because I thought, well, it's your show. So now that I've been introduced, I can start introducing.
You can play the guest card.
Yeah,
anytime.
awesome. Okay,
Go for it. You got special privileges.
Yeah. Here's like my one minute summary. I'm a local boy. I grew up in Amity. Went to school at Western Oregon University.
Go Wolves.
Yeah, that's what I like. That's where I actually started doing campus ministry, and which led me to go to seminary and maybe do something in this realm of ministry. I ended up church planting, and most recently, church planted Soma Church in West Salem, which kind of was my springboard for connecting with Salem Leadership Foundation. So been a part of those guys for like 5 years. So. Yeah. We do a lot of community bridge building, not physical bridges, but, connecting.
That would be sweet.
It would be, wouldn't it? Yeah. My wife actually works for an engineering firm, so she could actually say they do bridge building. But
literally does.
Yeah. So, So
if you could build a second bridge across the river, I would be all for that. But why would you do something so silly?
So we literally, I spend most of my day introducing people to each other and then having coffee together and kind of doing these conversations that you're talking about.
So for those of you unfamiliar with Salem Leadership Foundation here in the greater Salem-Keizer area, I would recommend giving them a look-see, heading to their website. It's just slf.com or Salem Leadership Foundation.
SalemLF.
SalemLF. Fancy.
Yeah.
.org.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's pretty big.
Hoity-toity. If you're interested just in how you can better serve the Salem-Keizer area in so many different capacities, working with people of faith and goodwill, nonprofits, government organizations, what I love about you guys is you bring everybody to the table and say, how can we do the best job we can? How can we utilize our resources rather than wasting them? And that's something that, again, is very close to my heart, and that we're going to talk about today, this idea of how do we best help without actually hurting, without creating more problems. And we believe in our line of work that you don't necessarily reinvent the wheel. If there's somebody you know who's doing something better than you, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Ask them how you can work alongside them. So we've had the pleasure with our students and ministry partners over the years of serving alongside SLF in many endeavors. Our students, we used to do a spring break mission trip on a regular basis, and we realized, instead of spending all this time and resources to plan a trip going somewhere, why don't we look for opportunities to serve right here in our own backyard? So we've connected with Community Connect right here at, microphone. I was told, by the way, I needed to get close to the microphone this week, so
it's dangerous because of his hands.
It is. I need to have them tied for the safety of us all and for the well-being of us all. By the way, Richard.
Daniel, can you get on that right now?
Get some string out.
The show is taking a completely different turn than it.
Richard, my wife says she can't hear you very well, so Just get more intimate and up close.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
How about
Okay,
now?
perfect. By the way, I was also told to give a shout out to my wonderful boys, 6 and 3-year-old Jason and Cole. If you're listening, Daddy loves you. I miss you. I'll see you in about an hour and a half. Please be good to mommy, okay? And let's all have a good day today.
So I think the thing that I like about SLF is they are, I mean, you already said it, but I want to reemphasize that they are a bridge building organization. Yeah. They're not about their agenda is about making the community better by getting people connected. And it's pretty amazing what happens when you get people connected, even if they fundamentally would normally not connect. When you connect them and you get them moving in the same direction, then
it's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm one of these like nerdy guys in my life, like, and I can talk about it later too, but it's fun when you get 2 or 3 people in the room together who completely disagree. And then it's like, and
It's a novel concept these days.
Oh, I love it. And so like Bob Goff, he uses this phrase for his personality. He's a balloon guy. And I'm like, oh, I'm a balloon guy. Like, I'm like, guys, this is fun. Let's see the optimistic side. So it's kind of fun, like, to walk out of a room after people were about ready to like maybe kill each other. Like, and they're actually willing to work together, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it's kind of fun. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah. Why don't you share a little bit about your particular role at the SLF, your lightning rod zone?
Yeah.
Is that still the term being used? Lightning rod?
It is. So Sam Skillern founded the organization. It wasn't just him. There's I could list a lot of names. And he developed this language of calling different people in different areas lightning rods. So we all kind of laugh at it, but it's true. So sometimes I get called like an electric rod or a lightning staff. But lightning rods, and my area is West Salem, so I live there. I like to say I live, work, play, and worship in West Salem a lot of times. My job is it's just to kind of make things happen or start fires, which may be a pretty poor...
Again, not literal.
Yeah. So I've really started a whole bunch of horrible things. But again, it's my job is to kind of insert myself, engage conversations, we talk about table serving and setting. And then I think it's done best when I kind of get out of the way, because I think sometimes the longer I sit and do it, the worse it gets. So I think there's smarter people around me.
Yeah. It's a novel concept of looking at all the people who are doing good things and saying, how can we combine resources and be the most effective? So, again, if you're interested in just how you can better serve your community right in your own backyard, or if you have resources you'd like to provide, if you like to connect with people who are already doing amazing work, because, again, if there's somebody who's out there doing it already, rather than saying, how can I compete with them, it's saying, hey, they have a great thing going. How can I come alongside them and best serve? So enough of this seriousness. This is far too. We need to dip our toe in the water of these serious discussions with some wacky life observations. Okay, so we're gonna jump in with a brand new segment. I've done this the last 2 weeks, but I'm actually giving it a name. It's called Garrett's Random Musings. So I have 2 live questions I want to discuss for you guys that occurred to me this last week. So the first one, the first one I'll get to because it was a couple weeks ago. So Dwayne is enjoying a wonderful cup of coffee today. Where'd you get that from, by the way?
Urban Grange.
Urban Grange.
Yeah, shout out to
local
my
chef.
friends
Never
there.
been.
what?
I know. I'm a bad Salemite. All right.
It's
It's
there
on.
next week.
Well, honestly, since I got an
Right next
AeroPress
to
a couple years ago, I
Dokes
stopped
Ferry,
making my own
right?
coffee.
Right at the end of Dokes
Yeah,
Ferry.
Edgewater and Dokes Ferry.
Yeah, it comes down.
I honestly,
Randy
I
St.
don't,
George is the owner, man. The guy's he's
I
awesome.
don't get to the west side too much. I got nothing against West Salem. My doctor's office is out there, and usually I'm just passing through on my way to Monmouth. I live way out east, like almost out by Cordon Road. So
I say this kind of half joking. We actually think we're our own city sometimes. And so
Yeah.
just a little grain of
it
truth
is.
to that.
We're your own county.
Oh yeah.
Although
Same,
now,
same city, different county.
Yeah.
That should be the West Salem slogan.
Ooh, that's a
Same
t-shirt.
city, different county.
well, I was
I like
wondering.
that.
Rabbit trail, but with the reopening today, the governor did mention they're basically treating Marion and Polk as one entity. So whatever one does, the other does. Because I thought about that, like, what if Polk would open, but Marion didn't? How many people would come out to West Salem?
I was actually
like flooding the restaurant
in a sinister way, thinking like, "Wow, if Polk opens up faster, wow, this is but it just didn't happen."
Business boom, yeah. So I mean, it's kind of implausible. Anyway, so shout out Urban Grange. Next time I'm out on the west side, I'll definitely swing on by there for delicious beverage. But I was at Broadway Coffee House just a few days after they reopened here on May 27th. Shout out, wonderful, amazing ministry enterprise. We were having a staff meeting, actually with Richard and a couple of other staff, and I got there early. Guy went to order a latte. It's my usual order. Usually I make it at home, like I said, with my AeroPress, which is a wonderful invention, but I had a busy morning, so I was going to go grab one here while I waited and got some work done. I ordered it, and then I asked for it in a mug. They unfortunately informed me that they're not doing mugs right now. I'm guessing just COVID-related reasons, washing. I'm not sure. So they're only doing paper cups. I canceled the order. I'm like, I'm sorry, I just can't do it if it's not in a mug. And they kind of gave me the stink eye, and I totally get it. And I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm really sorry. I'm weird. It doesn't taste the same. It's just Daniel's giving me the stink eye right now.
I
can
was a
see it.
barista in a former life.
I would agree.
And yeah, that's a rough one.
Well, I still got something. I got a kombucha instead, which is healthier anyway. So
Coffee doesn't taste the same coming out of a plastic lid.
It doesn't.
It's true.
And this, I'm not just crazy. There's actually science behind it. Like with different beers, how they have different glasses, like the Pilsner glass, the mug. It does taste different the way the air hits it. For me, it's like it's the foam on top. Like I like to get a lot of foam. There's just something about the clank, too, of the mug against the plate. Yeah. I know I'm weird, and I could tell.
So, moral of the story is, now I've logged in my brain to annoy Garrett, get him a coffee
Right.
in a
Look, if I want
It's like
coffee,
precious information. If
and
you
then
need to
just
use
put it in
against
front of him and have him stare at it.
Yeah.
if I want coffee and it's good, and you give it to me for free, I'll eat it or I'll drink it. It's like free pizza. Like you're not looking for pizza, but if somebody gives it to you, it's hard to turn it down.
I lived in Texas for a while, so I would eat coffee. Actually, there's some.
Oh, like red eye gravy.
It can get very thick, so there's some truth to that.
Oh, like Turkish coffee.
Yeah, close to it.
All right. Well, okay. So anyway, like I said, I got a kombucha. It was wonderful. They didn't spit in it, I don't believe. So that's just one of my weird things. So this got me thinking.
I don't think they did.
What?
Just you're okay, bro.
No. Well, they had masks on, so they would have had to like pull it aside.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Tough.
Anyway, all right.
This got me thinking, what are your weird, quirky food things? So I got two more I'll share with you, and then so while you guys think about your own. So one of them, when I'm eating any sort of Pacific Rim food, so sushi, ramen, Korean food, Thai, Vietnamese, Malaysian, love it all. I love, I'm a citizen of the world when it comes to food. Love it, love it, love it. But when I'm doing that, any sort of dish, except for soup, I have to use chopsticks. I can't do it with a fork. So if I'm eating noodles, rice, sushi, pho, if I'm eating dim sum, dumpling, anything at all, I have to use chopsticks. Hawaiian time, it's something about it. In my mind, it tastes different. I feel like mentally I should be honoring the culture from which he's originated. And I can't do it. Now, I will say, when I'm having fried rice and you get down to like the very last scuttles at the end, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to grip. I will bust out the fork to get the last little bit as I shove it in
What
my
do you do
pie
if there's no chopsticks available? Do you just like disregard that?
He just doesn't eat.
He doesn't eat. He
He
sits
just
in.
yeah,
he
I'm
sits
listens to
in.
music. He's
No,
just
I
like,
just
I
go-
can't eat this. I'm
I
so sorry.
refuse to.
I'm gonna have to send this back.
Yeah. Wow.
I'll go chop down a tree and slice on my own. No, luckily my wife got me a sushi kit for Christmas this last year. Shout out Jessica, by the way. Love you. I'll see you in a little bit.
How many shout outs are you gonna do? You want to shout out?
I have 3 family members. I shouted out my
should have a
son to my wife.
sponsorship for this.
I
This
should
is a shout out.
sponsor
for-
every segment. Hey, if you're out there listening and would love to, we're looking for sponsors. But anyway, so I have a set of like 4 different pairs of chopsticks, like good quality, because I usually just do the little wooden ones we would get when we do Chinese or Thai takeout. So I usually always have one in hand at home. So anyway, that's another example of my food peculiarities. I have a hard time saying that word.
All right.
So
By Boise Cascade.
what's your food peculiarity?
So less food, definitely coffee, and it's related to the cup. So preface: I am not. I don't have any obsessive compulsive things. I just don't. I'm kind of a scattered random person. I'm a very experiential. Doesn't matter. You can serve me anything, I eat it. However, when I have coffee from a cup, and some of you guys, you can see this, it's very important that where the cup comes together, I don't know, what would you call this?
The seam.
The seam, thank you. That the seams match, and I don't have my lid on here, but if I did, it would be very important that the opening for my lid match with the seam. And I don't know why. I can't figure it out. Aside from that, I have no other.
Wait, so you'd want the opening on the other side of where the seam is?
Yeah, it's got to be opposite.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
yeah,
because it would be
and-
weird to have that right there. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And it's less. I can't figure it out. I do it every time, and I'll sit and adjust it. I'll pop the lid off if I need to, and just make it perfect.
Or else it just won't taste the same.
It doesn't taste the same.
Psychologically
but,
taste the same. All right.
I think mine's
That's
pretty
solid.
simple. I'm a goulasher.
Yeah.
Food should be mashed together
Oh.
in a complex marrying of textures.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. In general, I like foods together rather than apart.
Interesting.
I find food more interesting when it's together. It's probably why I like curry and all those other types of food, because they're complex arrangements.
Yeah. You get like when you get the perfect bite of food, like say you got like meat,
Like to me, rice
veggies.
is boring without
Yeah, you need
Yes.
to. Interesting.
Well,
sauces, man.
I wonder
Sauces.
what that says about your personality.
see,
I don't know, but I think
it says you like
I think
tasting
my wife
complex
has made it
flavors
even
together.
more intense because she's like a sauce person.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's got to have a sauce. So I think I've partially adopted that.
I've been living in the Enneagram lately. It's a side topic. We don't have to do it. You know.
Oh, we love side topics.
Okay,
Your
good.
side, right.
And then I've been like doing this whole like, oh, what does it say about your Enneagram number? And which is like the very thing you shouldn't do. But
Yeah.
So now I'm like totally profiling you.
What number would I be?
I'm not an expert in this. I don't know what.
You have 9 guesses, so let's get this
I'm
right.
gonna go with a 3. 3? That's what I was thinking. 3. That's only because I know a little bit about your personality.
I think 8
Oh,
might be pretty similar.
No idea what 8 refers to.
I like that. Do you know how it matches with the Winnie the Pooh characters? By the way,
No.
can I be super random?
Please,
yeah,
be
please.
super random, because
Okay, then I'll
I won't
stop.
sleep at night unless you tell me this. 'Cause
So
I'm officially curious.
my this is like 3 weeks ago, and again I just been living a little bit in the Enneagram. My wife says, "Hey, have you seen? Is it Christopher Robin where he's older?"
Yeah.
Okay, so we watched that.
Oh yeah, that's one just with who's the Scottish guy, the actor?
Yeah, I don't know. See, I don't.
Ewan McGregor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't pay attention to names. So as I'm watching this, I'm like, wait a second. I bet you if you take all the characters and you put them with an Enneagram number. So I started like nerding out, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What's that?" I think so. I have
Our producer Daniel just said Piglet's a 6. For those who can't
Ooh.
hear, by the way.
So then I Googled it, and somebody's already done this. And that is the story of my life. I'm like, that was a great idea. And somebody's already figured out all these numbers.
There's nothing new under the sun.
No. So
I think some wise guy once said that in a book long ago.
You know, there may not be anything new, but not everything that is here has been discovered.
Again, people can't hear you.
You can.
Oh, you
Have
can
a
now?
mic.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
He has his own mic now.
Yay! Now you get Daniel's witty contributions.
They're few and
So,
far between.
okay, so we went
Witty.
from chopsticks to Enneagram. So Richard's goulasher. That's interesting because I'm a goulasher too, but my wife is a meat and potatoes lady. Nothing wrong with that. Like I love a good steak.
It's just funny
and green
because you're
beans.
like the hotter, spicier.
Yeah. I got Jessica to go from mild to mild plus whenever we go out for Thai food. She's gone up to a mild plus, and
So the last time Hope ordered, was it Thai food? Yeah, it was Thai food. It was coconut curry.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, yeah, medium. Well, their medium is like, it's so hot. And I'm like, I can handle a lot of spice. And I like sweat bullets when I eat it. I'm like,
yeah,
it's
but
so hot.
Well, it's healthy
I could
for
not
you too.
imagine the hot, but I almost want to try it.
I'm just dying already. I have Midwest background, so this just has nothing. I think. Oh.
I did that the other day. So when we had our national staff meeting with our organization, our virtual Zoom meeting, since we could all be together, and they gave us $25 DoorDash cards to order lunch in lieu of the money they would have spent in person. So I ordered from a awesome Thai restaurant here in town. Got the pad ki mao, second best pad ki mao I've ever had. Amazing. And I went with the 2 on the spice because I love spice too, but I have learned my lesson because there's been a couple times I've been out for Thai and Indian, and I'd be like, yeah, make it hot. And I just picture them in the back being like, this stupid white guy thinks he can handle this. I'm going to put him in
Duff's
this place.
Wings in New York.
Yes.
He
Duff's
got
Wings.
the hottest one. And he
Why?
couldn't
Because they're
finish
there.
it. It was like brutal. He was sweating.
We were in Buffalo, so we had to
Bullets.
get.
It's where the original hot wing was developed.
Not the
Duff.
original. That was the Anchor Bar, but it's one of the big institutions out
Anyway,
there.
yeah. But it was, he couldn't, like, I went for the one I could enjoy. And
I
he
know,
just
it
was,
was.
like, he
No,
was,
and
it was
you're-
brutal.
I
It
didn't
was
even
brutal.
go for the hottest. I went for like the hot, and then there's like the nuclear option, the like where you have to sign a waiver. So, yeah, anyway, spicy food is your friend until it's not. So,
All right.
okay, so my second little random observation, and Richard, we've done this one before.
I think we might want to just
Do we need to
skip
move
ahead.
on? Okay. We'll get to
Because
the,
we're already 10
We'll get to the
20
condiment
minutes. We're in
fingers.
20 minutes in.
All right.
And
Well,
if we want to talk about helping
And I
hurts
do.
and other stuff,
Thank you.
we should probably.
I was wondering what podcasters do. How do you keep your time?
It's a broad navigational buoy we operate with it. All right, we'll get to condiment fingers next week. We've gone over this with you and I, but it'll all make sense when we get to it. So, for those of you who know, we like to start out each once we get through all this silliness, we like to move on to the more serious direction of our show, and we like to examine what we call first world problem. So, for those of you who haven't joined us yet and haven't heard the phrase, the first world problem is something that we in 21st century developed Western world will often complain about, but in the grand scheme of things is literally no big deal at all or nothing that we should be upset about. So Dwayne actually has our first world problem today. I was talking with him the other night, and he mentioned something that he experienced here recently. So, and it's something that I can relate to. I think we can all mostly relate to. So why don't you share your first world problem you experienced here?
So, context. I usually like to like tell like self-deprecating stories. I feel like this is one I may have done well at actually.
Okay.
So I just want everyone to hear that. It was a few months ago, and we're getting everything set up in our house. And the cable TV need to be upgraded. So I'm on the phone with, I can't remember her name. It's all written down. And so we're on the phone, and she's having to reset the box multiple times. And I actually, to my credit, did not get super frustrated. I had a light day, and I'm kind of laughing. And she just kind of stopped, and she's like, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I know this is taking so long, and you must be frustrated." And she's had to bounce back and forth. And so I've got kids in the background, like, Dad, when can we watch TV? And what's funny is, like, I think I actually put her on speakerphone. I'm like, and I'll call her Kim. I don't know her name, right? Yeah. I can't remember. And then I'm like, Kim, I just want to point out, I actually think I said first world problem. I said, like, the first world problem of what we're dealing with, we have 3 TVs we're trying to set up. And I said this loud enough so my kids are hearing, right? And I'm like,
Lifeless.
Right. There are multiple cars in our driveway. You guys are all waiting because the Wi-Fi is down to get on your devices. And so I said, Kim, if this is my worst problem of the day, I think we're okay. And it got quiet, and then she just busts out laughing. And so I'm kind of doing this with my phone, like, do you see how she's mocking you? Like, and Kim and I formed like this bond.
Yeah.
As we just stuck it to the kids. But we even said, I'm like, okay, this is such a first world problem. Like, take your time. Like, if I don't have cable TV,
somehow you will rebuild.
We're gonna make it. Yeah. So I have plenty of those first world problems where I think I'm on the other side of it. And,
and I think
that's funny.
That's cool that you had that as a learning opportunity with your kids as well. Because again, I got six and a 3-year-old boy at home. Wonderful. Jason Cole, if you're still listening, or if you haven't run off to you play with your toys, I love you, and I'll see you here in about an hour. And we've had opportunities like that where they'll get upset over the slightest thing when they get so many toys, we need to give a few away because there's literally no room for them, or we don't get the exact color of something they wanted from their grandparents, whatever it might be. Or when, same thing, I have to reset the TV, and they had to wait 2 more minutes to watch one of the 1,000 cartoons they can watch on Netflix. And just realizing, okay, do you understand, there are children around the world who have never even seen a TV in their life. There are children around the world who don't know if they're going to have food in their stomach today. And Daniel pointed out a good thing when we first started this, and it's good to remember. It doesn't mean it's not meant to minimize the fact that it does suck for you, because I think that could be the other extreme of, so-and-so has it worse, so that means I have no right to be upset about anything. It just is to give us perspective of, okay, how bad is it really? So I think teaching your kids that at a young age can be very beneficial for them going forward.
Wants versus needs.
Yes, absolutely.
I should write a parenting book. I used to, like at the dinner table, I get so frustrated when kids would get picky. And I'm like, well, would you just want to see? So I'd start Googling images of, kids around the world without food, which probably not helpful. So I'm not only dehumanizing, it's like I'm engaging in this whole process. And so if you were to ask them today, they'd be like, yeah, my dad, if he starts Googling images, you've ticked him off. I don't know if that was really helpful. I don't think I'm going to put that in my parenting books. But.
Yeah, I tried that once with my 6-year-old, and he said, "Well, you could send them my food if they're hungry."
Ooh. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's a good point. So,
Yeah, it's
I
kinda
think
like,
the main
what
thing
are
with
you
food
doing
is
about
just
it?
flexibility. You're completely inflexible.
yeah. And there are the hills that some people die on of like, no, this is the greatest injustice ever. So, all right. So keep in mind your first world problems of the day. All right, Richard's got to go do Richard things. He'll be back momentarily. If he's not back in 5 minutes, we're replacing you. So our second segment of the day, which you've come to love, no doubt, over the last 5 weeks, is our cliche of the day. And again, for those who haven't been with us yet, we have a love-hate relationship with cliches. I don't hate cliches because they're not true. We say we hate cliches because they oversimplify complex issues, and it can sometimes reduce them down to your quick and simple, lazy response, which somebody going through a problem or a trial in life doesn't necessarily want to hear. So today's cliche that I want to dissect a little bit, which I think in lieu of current times is somewhat applicable, is the idea of never judging a book by its cover. We've all heard this before. Okay, I hope you have out there. The idea behind it is that you can't just look at something on the surface and assume you know everything about it. And of course that's true. This applies for people. This applies for locations. This applies for anything in life. This applies for stories. The idea that if you only look at a book or only look at the cover of a DVD or only look at the first page of a website, you won't get the full picture. So why I think it's a cliche and incomplete, though, is you shouldn't judge everything. You can't assume you know everything you need to know about a book by its cover. At the same time, the purpose of a cover in a book or movie or the front of a house or the front of a business is to give you an impression of what it's like. I mean, that's literally why it's there. If you see a book cover, it tells you the author. It shows a picture. It tells you, and I guess technically you have to look at the back, so you flip it over and see the back cover. But it's a back cover in a way. Exactly. The front and back cover is a collective unit. It tells you the information, exactly what it's about.
Yeah.
So in a way, yes, you can't assume everything, but I think it's also safe to say that's the point of the cover, whatever you present, either as your person or of a particular object, is you want people to have some sort of understanding of what's inside. So the reason why I got me thinking about this is we live next to a city park here in Salem, which is wonderful. It's been especially great during lockdown here, having a place for our boys to go. And we love to people watch. We love to observe and watch people as they're coming and going. And when we first moved into our house for a while, there were some ne'er-do-wells that would come by the park and do some nefarious things. So we, over time, got kind of good at being able to discern, okay, is this somebody who's actually up to something? Because like we've busted a couple drug deals that have gone on there, people doing nefarious things in the park that we've been able to help to prevent. And as a result of that, and our neighbors kind of working together, there's been a lot less goings on. And 99% of the people who use the park are wonderful, great people. But over time, we've been able to observe and say, okay, is this person actually up to something, or, is there nothing to worry about here? And it doesn't tell us everything. I don't presume to say I can look at a person and the way they're acting or the way they're behaving or the clothes they're wearing or the car they're driving and presume to know everything about them. But it does give you some idea where we all have that situation we look at and we say, this seems a little weird. Let me take another look. Now, to say that this seems a little weird, so I'm going to call 911 on this person and have them arrested just for looking weird, that's not what we're advocating. But we all do this. We all look at people or, again, locations, businesses, particular things, and based on our first appearance, we have some sort of thought of what is behind the curtain. Yeah.
I would
all the time.
I would even make the case, like, I'm going deep thoughts here.
Deep thoughts with Jack Andy.
Right. Deep thoughts.
With Jack Handy.
Like the human mind is wired that way.
Absolutely.
I make paradigms, and that's how we could discuss one day why I think it's wired that way and how it got that way. But I think we're wired that way. So if I'm taking my kids somewhere and I see someone, we can name anything, right? And carrying a knife, like my mind goes paradigm. I don't.
Yeah.
I think, oh, how do I avoid some level of risk?
Yes.
Maybe they're cooking with their knife out on. I mean, we
You
do this
never
all
know.
day. So yeah,
In psychology, we call it a schema. It's a brain
schema,
shortcut.
yeah.
there you go. Right.
So that
Absolutely.
we can identify threats quickly and effectively.
And we do it all the
sometimes
time.
we do it all the time, but
Right.
we
Yeah.
don't. It's
There's
not
a
like
reason why if
conscious.
I'm- oh, I'm sorry,
thing.
Daniel, go
It's-
ahead.
You know, it's fine. It's just not like a conscious thing most of the time. It's usually implicit.
Absolutely.
I'm just thinking there's a reason why when I go to cross the street, I have developed a schema. So when I see like the stop hand thing, I don't go. And I've learned that when I see the little walkie person, I go. But I still have no guarantee that someone's going to stop. Right? I mean, like I'm trusting
Exactly.
the system. And so I don't think we.
Well, with your notion, I mean, it's not always as obvious and blatant as somebody holding a knife crossing the street. Sometimes it's just the way people are acting and the way they present themselves. And we've actually discussed the idea of profiling in our Agoras before, the idea that we all profile. It's a dirty word. It's a four-letter word, but yet we all do it. I say the question is, are we profiling based on things that people cannot control, such as their race, gender, ethnicity, physical disabilities? If you're profiling based on something people have no control over, that's ridiculous, and that should be monitored. But there's also profiling over things people can control. Again, one of our big ones is when people would sometimes, come by the park to our house dressed like all in black, head to toe, with their hood pulled up on a 95-degree day. That's one of those things that, that's a little odd. Sure. That's kind of suspicious. Or a car that will just, pulls up to the park with two grown men in it, just sitting there, for 30 minutes, not getting out. That's another one. It's like, that's a little bizarre. What is that person trying to present? So I think that profiling isn't a terrible thing. I mean, there's a whole division of criminology around the idea of profiling. Criminal Minds, the behavioral analysis unit of the FBI. It's a show based on criminal profiling to try to find and track serial killers based on their MO. So we're diving into the weeds a little bit here. This could be a whole other topic for a whole other week, but very deep thoughts. Yeah. It's just this idea. So, Richard, we talk about while you're gone, how the idea of never judging a book by its cover is somewhat true, because you can't know everything you need to know by the cover. But at the same time, the cover is designed to give you a kind of 85,000-foot view, a first impression of what is inside. So in a way, we should judge a book partially by its cover, but not completely. So I don't know if you have any thoughts to add to that idea.
I mean, I think the whole complex idea of, I think this is where you get into the disparity between, so Daniel used a word implicit.
Yeah.
There's a whole study going on right now trying to figure out whether biases are implicit or not. Whether you believe that or not, there's hard linking whether you have an implicit, because one of the ways the studies work is they don't give you time. So they narrow the time window, so they try to just get your gut reaction. But, it's not always clear why your gut reaction goes one way or the other. Yeah. So this is, they use these things to figure out if people have implicit biases towards a particular group of people, so on and so forth. I think the problem is, are there just things that are quote unquote natural? Like, for example, we fear the unknown. That is a natural human
or the different
reaction. Yeah, it's a natural human reaction. It doesn't make it right, but it doesn't make it automatically wrong. Just because, if I was walking down, let's say, a dark alley, and there's an ominous figure behind me, my fight or flight's going to go off, and I got zero control over that. Zero. If my body tells me I feel threatened.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is, to me, it seems like we have to make a step towards differentiating between what is naturally occurring in humans versus what should not be naturally occurring. So, if I have a reaction to something, maybe I have a past and that says this is dangerous.
Absolutely.
Versus looking at a situation and saying, is it something that I actually consciously fully believe about this book or cover or group of things that leads me to make a different action? I think there has to be a demarcation between those two things. which means a separation for those of you.
Yeah.
Demarcation means separation. And I have never experienced or heard very good reasoning as to where one ends and the other begins.
It's kind of an arbitrary line that people want to draw.
Well, the implicit idea is sort of like this, like, oh, well, you're just naturally biased against that. But the question comes in, if there is, I think to me it matters whether something's conscious or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It matters whether something's conscious or not, because conscious things, I believe, we can fully, completely try to disengage with. For example, trauma therapy. Mm-hmm. We're disengaging something we're somewhat conscious of, and we're trying to unwork it. Now, I think you could also say that about some things that are implicitly biased. Right. But the question really comes down to, if you experience an implicit, so here, I'll go back to the situation, and this is where I think more needs to be done, or at least I haven't seen the work. So I'm going down and I have a reaction and I'm like, oh, afraid, who is this person? They're going to hurt me, or maybe they could, I just don't know. Then I have the work of reasoning out and trying to ascertain whether the situation warrants my response. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And that requires work, energy, and all that type of stuff. Yeah. And I think that's kind of one of the areas where it gets really muddy, because people want to just assume, well, this automatically has to be the conclusion. Yeah. Versus, there's this old saying, hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. And so if you're someone who's been deeply hurt by a particular thing that happened in your life, you might hurt someone else, or you might, if all you've ever seen is people lashing out in anger, you might lash out in anger, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's got to be there's got to be a good demarcation between how you allow those two things to function together. Yeah. One you're fully conscious of, and one you're not. And I would argue one I don't know that you have full control over.
And as just historically humans, sorry, all humans listening, but humans don't necessarily do a great job of functioning, picking up extra work to do more self-examination, right? We tend to be kind of lazy, myself included. I'm okay at a certain point, but then it's tiring. It's exhausting. Yeah. And I just think the thing you're saying is a process of self-awareness that, by and large, a lot of people may not necessarily want to do.
It's quick and easy to go with your gut instinct, your initial first reaction.
And social media helps me. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to go here.
No, go.
It helps me not think as much, because I'm like, oh, sweet, that expressed it, great. Well,
this meme perfectly captured. Yeah.
Literally, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we actually unpacked the idea. I made an argument that social media stops the thinking process, because it actually just gets you to either agree or disagree. Versus if you study how arguments are actually made, especially public arguments, data warrant conclusion, we jump right to the conclusion. We don't look at the data adequately. And we want to rush.
Well,
sure.
And I think
my soundbite.
Yeah, and Dwayne, you've worked fair amount recently in the area of trauma-informed care. Now, trauma, impacts your cognitive reasoning in certain circumstances. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about this, but I've maintained that to have kind of building on your idea, Richard, to have a natural reaction to when you hear something or see something based on experience you had does not make you a bad person. Now, the problem is when as more information comes out, you just refuse to acknowledge that information and change what you believe. So, for example, I'll use 2 examples here, and these are somewhat controversial.
Why don't you just ask him the question?
Okay, yeah. We'll get those later.
Because
so in your studies of people who experience trauma, what are some ways in which that can lead them to certain initial reactions or to certain gut responses that may be irrational or dangerous based on the trauma they've experienced?
Yeah, I'm not this smart, so I'll I've got a good friend. He works in the neuroscience. He also pastors, and he has helped me so much. And when I say this, he can contact me and say, you totally messed it up. However, I have learned from him, a lot of it boils down to, and you said it earlier, there's a certain rigidity or flexibility with which we handle things. And I think, Dwayne's opinion, oftentimes trauma, and especially unexamined trauma, causes us to get rigid quick. And that's when I tighten up, I hold on, and I'm just not able to be as loose-gripped and flexible.
Yeah.
Because it's dangerous, right? Like
Absolutely.
if I'm too flexible, it may cause me physical, emotional pain. So so we grab rigidity as a quick thing, and I think I'm gonna pull together themes. Rigidity being we start to label groups, right? Like all this, all that, and
Because it's easy and
it
quick.
dehumanizes.
Yes.
And what happens is
Yes.
we get quick paradigms, but what we don't end up doing is start wading into like the waters of flexibility. You know, like, oh, I gotta hold this loosely.
Exactly.
And now I gotta talk to somebody who I disagree with, but you know what? They're a human, and wow, they really care. So that's hard. So I think trauma kicks us into rigidity quick. I would say that for me. Like the most rigid times I get, and I tend to pride myself on being a really flexible guy, but boy, when I get rigid, it's control, it's fear. I mean, I hold on tight.
So you got to wonder if some
everybody's got a
of what maybe even social media does. I wonder if it reinforces some known or unknown trauma that someone is experiencing, and it forms that rigidity. It would be very
This group
interesting.
is bad, you know. And when you can literally pick and choose what information you want to come in front of your eyes,
Or when a machine.
or when a machine
It's kind of
analyzes
like
what
a
you
thing
hear.
now on social media where people are
Yeah.
prideful that people like unfriend them or unfollow or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, well, there's the door versus it's like.
I'm guessing Facebook's had a record number of unfollows these last couple weeks.
Well, and you said it. Whenever, whether anybody agrees or disagrees, but if there's a tendency to create a pick and choose a side, it implies drawing a line.
Correct.
And there may be times to draw lines, by the way. I'm not saying you shouldn't have, right?
yeah.
But whenever we draw a line in the sand, to use that phrase, we've just created a rigidity of some sorts. Maybe
be the
necessary,
cliche for
maybe
next
not. But I'll tell you what, whenever lines get drawn, I'll be the first to say communication typically breaks down.
Yep.
And people start gathering allies, right? So I'm like, oh, well, I'm on this side. You are too. You should be my buddy, and let's team up because I now need someone to reinforce my stance, and
to convince me I'm not crazy or wrong. Yeah.
or I need someone to hold me back from going to that line
Yeah.
and starting brushing away. Like that's hard. So I think we form allies.
This is we should do an entire week on this. Well, like I said, we talked about the idea of profiling. So I think one of these weeks we can do an entire question of the day on this. But I do
Get
want
your neuroscience friends.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my goodness, it would be great.
If you want to shout him out, you can.
Yeah, I mean his name's David Mannock.
David Mannock.
Awesome. He
Okay.
pastors here in the city. He just does good work, and I just think
awesome.
he's just he holds things in a really good way. He brings research to the table, but he just holds things well. So
Yeah.
that's my shout out.
And see, again, this is what you guys do. You
Oh,
connect
David.
people with people who can help. You recognize you're not an expert in everything, or anything in some cases.
Oh, I'm not an expert in anything.
You're a jack of all trades, master.
I wonder if we could ask him to be on the podcast.
Who could ask him to be on the podcast?
I definitely think that could happen.
I think that would be very, very good. Because, again, that's an area that and I mentioned this before, I'm not a naturally empathetic person, too. I married an empathetic woman, so that helps. So that's something that in the ministry I have a hard time having compassion on people who've experienced trauma. But in case you haven't noticed, there's a lot of young people who have a lot of trauma in their life. It's kind of common. So something I'd love to learn more about.
Well, I think it's also people I think trauma is a human condition, and I think we've just refused to deal with it, and we've had really good ways of ignoring it and pouring it into like work or anything like that. So now I think we have like this condition of we haven't had to survive as much as our parents and our grandparents have. So now we have this freedom of opulence that now we need something to distract ourselves with almost. But now, so let's dig up everyone else's problems, including our own, and like let's make it. I feel like that's kind of like a trend with younger people right now is like talking about trauma and depression and anxiety and everything.
Because you have the
It's more
luxury
open
of doing
now.
it. Yeah.
It's less, but with your parents, like it's hard to talk about depression with your mom, right? My mom. I don't know your mom. I'm talking about my mom, or
The royal moms.
the
collective.
plural you.
Totally.
Our moms, our dads, or older people, because it's like that's the thing they didn't deal with, really. And so like mental health is like a new thing to a lot of older people too, but it's like that stuff isn't new. They just didn't deal with it the same way that we're dealing with it now.
And what, I mean, we're just throwing this word out. What constitutes trauma, right? I mean, like I have to recognize, like I've used it and I describe it, and we all have it, but man, there's a lot of gray in that, and there's scales of it. I mean, we can
too.
Having to wait an extra hour for your Comcast to get hooked up is not trauma.
No, and yet we know these individual stories. Someone could have that may conjure up a traumatic event.
Yes,
right. But again, like that instance, we would say, oh, that's low level. But with an individual, it could conjure up something horrible. We don't even know it. So we wade in these waters where I think if we're not flexible, like. Again, even the word trauma can become rigid. like there's just a varying of degrees.
It's a loaded term.
I was talking with somebody recently, and then I can stop beyond there. But I was talking about I come back from 300 years of Anabaptist heritage. So go Amish and Mennonite. Like I have these great stories, and I love my background, but my background is marked. If you said, well, what's your family background? I would say, boy, it's a family of martyrs. Like, that's just part of our heritage identity. I mean, people don't know that. And so again, I can carry that stuff. Maybe I need to not carry it as much. So
maybe. Yeah. Again, just disconnection and actually knowing people as individuals versus just in what tribe are you in. That's the root of so many problems in the world today. We could dive into this for hours. I do want to actually just take like 3 minutes because we pushed off the viral exam the last several weeks, and we're going to dive into the question of the day. So I try to avoid social media as much as I can, especially in times of upheaval, because it riles up the blood so much. But it does have its purpose. I do have one because of the nature of the work we're in. Again, it's important means of connection, and over the last several months now with the COVID season we've been in, I've seen a lot of memes relating to the idea of the new normal. I don't know if you guys have heard that phrase, like, let's not get things back to normal, let's make a new normal when we come out of this. And it's one of those, again, kind of like a cliche. It's not that it's untrue, but it's maybe incomplete. And I get the sentiment of like, hey, let's use this as an opportunity to examine and better ourselves. At the same time, I'm always one to say, okay, let's not, throw the entire baby out with the bathwater just because we can. It reminds me of G.K. Chesterton quote, one of my favorite authors of all time, one of the most quotable authors, brilliant man of faith and defender of reason, who said every time you knock down a fence, you should pause long enough to reflect on why that fence was put there in the first place. And I think this applies for all aspects of life. We in 21st century America, I think, are really good at wanting to knock down fences. Say, this fence has been up. This is the way we've done this for so long. Let's do something different. And there's times where different is good, but then you also should pause and think, okay, why is it that we've done this for so long? Or, why has this been the standard practice? Maybe there's some reason behind it. Maybe there's some valid reason why we've done it this way. And it doesn't mean we can't change, but just changing it, just throwing it out for the sake of throwing it out. And also we have this tendency to say, every time something goes wrong with the system, we say, let's completely throw that out and let's never do that again. It's like, no, 98% of the time this works. You had this one glitch. You had this one thing that happened, and that's unfortunate, but let's not throw the entire system out, whatever it might be. And that presupposes the idea that there is a good, that there is, the ideal, something we should aspire to. But it's got me thinking of what do we want the new normal to look like? Is it good to say let's completely redo the way we do society, the way we do life together? Because I'm not one of these people who wraps myself in the flag and says, America is perfect in everything. We live, and we can do no wrong. I'm the first one to criticize, and say, hey, we can do better as a country. We can do better as a society. But I think on the whole, we've got a lot of things right. And I think that we shouldn't discount that. We shouldn't discount the idea that, we've come a long ways and we have progressed. Are we where we need to be? No, there'll be no perfect system this side of heaven, I believe. But at the same time,
or in undoing a system, do you create and propagate a whole nother set of problems?
Yes.
Which system has the?
I would vote yes.
Generally.
I mean, I think part of that, so like what you're beginning to unpack is
This is
Okay, we'll have limited time to
Man,
unpack
you guys
it.
go
two-
deep, by the way. This is fun.
Think about this for just a second. If you unpack the idea of breaking down a system without ever realizing why the system was put there in the first place, which is the removing the fence thing
Yeah.
that you had, G.K. Chesterton talked about. It comes down to partly, like, I think there's this underlying view of what humans are that it has to be asked. Like, for example, I would argue if you take a system away that tries to, if its basic function, and you can argue that it's not doing this anymore, is to, like keep the peace or like, due process to me.
Yeah.
I'm a big due process person. And the reason due
same
process is there is because if you look at the history of the world, people with power could just be like, I don't like you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Or an angry mob could be like, we want this, so give it to us.
In how much injustice has been done just because somebody didn't get a fair trial, yada, 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 yada. Or biases lead certain conclusions that shouldn't be there. And with the people who have the power, they go ahead and use those conclusions. And so the interesting thing, though, is if you remove the system completely, I think you would open up a door, maybe to Pandora's box, that if those problems exist in the system, right, with some checks and balances, when you put a system in place that has no checks and balances, why would you not believe that those things would not just propagate themselves at a much higher rate? And to me, that's one of the things I think about is if I'm removing a fence, I want to know that the removing of the fence is going to lead to things that I would value: more freedom, more justice, more et cetera. Is that going to actually happen?
It's crazy. I mean, I love what you just said, because I feel like there's so many movie plots based on this idea. If you just reset it, would it be better? And I think
Fight Club.
And the same result, right? We don't
Complete total anarchy. Yeah.
It's just it always has good purpose, but it always has problems within it. And so I'm thinking, yay, historical, right? Like, power in the history of the world is there, but it hasn't always produced the best effects. And so if we could reset everything today, I'm convinced that we might have a few days. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is. This is my low view of humanity, bro. I'm like, but after a month or two, the system will reset, and it may look different with different names and people.
But the same problems will be there.
I think it is, and so I don't think
it's almost like humans are the problem.
They're simultaneously. What if they're simultaneously like the answer and the problem at the same time?
Right.
Yeah. Well, my theological worldview as a Christian tells me that we are the problem, and that's it's not a condition of a system; it's a condition of the sinfulness of the human heart.
But you can I think you can come to a lot of the same conclusions. Like one of the things, if you were a naturalist and you said,
we got
"Hey,
one more minute on this."
Yeah. Well.
A minute. Go for it. Final word. And then
No. I don't think it's the final word. I think we should just keep. But think about it. If you're a naturalist, scarcity is the rule of the world.
Yeah.
Scarcity is the rule of the world. So why do people steal? Okay. So the answer from the Christian perspective would be like, well, because they're evil. But the answer from the natural perspective is just, I think it's very valid in the sense that what it does is give you the tools to answer it, which says, well, scarcity. So why survival, scarcity and survival are linked. So if you need something and you have the power to take it, you will take it. And, one just removes the moralness from it, but they're both going in the same direction. And that's why I actually think that there is a natural order to the world. And I don't think you have to be someone of faith to recognize that natural order, that natural order is there. So if you remove the system, people won't steal less because scarcity is the problem. And so if I can get something without having, it's kind of like the easy button,
Right.
And there's no well, it would be like this. I do a little one, I don't get any repercussion. I would do it again.
A little bit.
Because my brain just got positive reinforcement. I didn't suffer consequence, so I do it again. So there's actually almost a way in which you would create a positive reinforcing of that action. And one of the things you talked about last week is cultures without ways to deal with violence.
Yeah. So last week, Dwayne, our question was, can two wrongs make a right? And we got an idea of, ultimately, you need to have some sort of concept of forgiveness in order to break this cycle of eye for an eye.
Forgiveness is the only way,
Yeah. You familiar with the end of the spear, the story behind it, the Jim Elliot, Nate Saint, the Harani tribe in Peru?
Oh, yeah.
Long story short, after they were martyred, then they were eventually converted to the Christian faith, and their culture never had the concept of forgiveness. It didn't exist. So if their people wrong our people, we have to kill them. That's just and it just went back and forth endlessly. And forgiveness gave them a way out of this cycle. And for the first time ever, which I think when you look at worldviews, either theological or non-theological, the gospel worldview, the Christian worldview, this doesn't make it right, but I believe that it is unique in the sense that it provides a way out of that cycle. True unmitigated forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, it also moves you away from vigilante justice.
Yes.
Right.
Like Batman's not right. Sorry to all you Batman fans out there, he's not. Batman actually creates.
You're gonna get some hate mail.
He creates almost in some sense less justice.
Well, what about Superman?
He takes everything into his own
Superman
hands.
is the lamest
Superman's an
superhero
alien.
ever.
No, I'm just kidding.
I have to agree with that.
Seriously.
Like, it's no fun when your only weakness is from another planet.
It's
I
not
don't
even
like
fair.
That.
No,
I don't like
it's
it.
fair.
I don't like it.
Superman's better in every way. Anyway,
Why though? Why is Superman right now?
All right.
right.
You finish your thought because I have something I think
Isn't
it actually
Superman
will
a
pertain to the
vigilante
topic.
too?
yes. But Superman
we'll eventually get
usually
to
works
work
on it, I
within
promise.
the system. He doesn't fight the system. That's what I would say. Anyway, I can't unpack a whole comic book. I just vigilante justice in general. But when it has to be you that does the justice part, there's a making it personal that I think doesn't exist when it's on somebody's behalf, and so. Think about it, like you have a community where violence is propagated, and then people feel like, well, nobody's going to stop them. There's no force or corrective action. We must be that force.
Yep.
Creates a vigilante sense.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. I think then violence becomes more prevalent.
Yeah.
I would argue violence will become more prevalent. I'm sure there's some data and other stuff that would probably show that out. But as long as justice is in our hands personally, then I think that we get to a not great place.
Ask a what if.
Last word to Dwayne.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
I do want to respect the time so we can have enough time to dive
I'm
into
good
the
at this,
topic
and I'm actually
today.
going to bring this into our topic.
And what ifs are good. Yeah. You can transition
so
into
just
our topic.
no. And I'm wondering, after I say this, can I use the little podcaster's room like in 1 minute?
Yes.
Because I saw Richard get out earlier, and I went, okay. And Urban Grange Coffee. So I've wondered this, and again, thinking this through with other friends. I've wondered, we so often equate like justice as the answer to injustice, right? It seems like that should be that. I just don't think it is. I feel like, and we could talk about we could get into what does that word justice really mean, and there's a deeper meaning. So, however, we see injustice in the world, and our response is so often to have justice. I just don't think I don't think justice is then the opposite of it. I think I've been asking what if honor is the better goal that we're actually going for? Now, in honoring others, in honoring those who have been victims of injustice, I think there will be justice, right? But I'm just I just think justice is too short. I think that line as the goal misses it every time.
Absolutely.
And I'm saying that in my own examples.
It's
I don't
interesting
ever
because
hit it.
you think about how many movie plots there are about. I was just watching The Princess Bride, right? Inigo Montoya.
I read, by the way, your coworker and our dear friend Monty Hall. When I talked about, he had no. I quoted it at one of the CAN meetings. Be like, it was the you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. He had no idea what I was talking about.
I'm going to text him right now.
He'd never seen the movie. No, that was a year ago.
Well, I'm going to tell you, we are checking in on this.
Okay, schedule a movie night, the two of you.
Favorite movie, but anyway.
Yeah.
Should I listen to this, or can I use the little podcast?
Go for it, and then we'll set up the question of the day.
You want me to hear this though?
Yeah, I did want you to hear this.
I know.
And then go for it.
So the end. Think about how many plots there are. I mean, I can think of what's the other one with the penguins, Madagascar? No, the cute little penguins from Madagascar, and the octopus, right?
Sure.
Dr. Dave,
Sure.
and they're he's like Dave,
Yes.
and they're
Whatever
like,
you're talking about for you.
Is that?
When do we know
Yeah,
got he has a snow globe collection? But his whole life is bent on getting revenge to the injustice of the cute little penguins getting the attention, and he didn't get it. And so his whole life is bent. Are they really happy at the end when they like get them? I don't know.
I haven't seen, so
I don't know.
I think
I'm gonna think about that as I
go for it.
And I'll
And
be
then
right back, so
we'll
you
tee it up when you get back here. We'll swap casserole recipes. No, what's that movie called? Because
I think
it's just called Penguins.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's super hilarious.
It's probably on Netflix.
It's so funny.
I'm sure my boys would love it, so maybe we could do a family movie night with that.
Yeah, and then he creates a machine where he makes them all really like ugly and disfigured and like little Frankenstein penguins.
He's jealous of their cuteness.
Yeah, and he's gonna get them back forever. And but even like in Princess Bride, he like the guy congratulates him when he almost kills him at the end. He's like, man, your sense of vengeance is really like it's your all-encompassing thing. But to me, it seems like it might be one of those things when you get it, are you actually really satisfied?
Yeah.
And so maybe honoring or even reconciliation or true forgiveness might be more, I believe would be more powerful.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's also notion we can never have perfect justice in this life. There's a measure of it certainly that we can receive, and there's some situations. I mean, all the justice in the world, all the punishment in the world. If somebody dies, if a loved one of yours is murdered, it's not going to bring them back. So it's like, are you going to be satisfied with less than perfect justice this side of heaven? Okay.
Well, it makes me.
Okay. Last word, Daniel. I swear, and then we're going to get.
Okay. Well, I mean, our system of justice has like multiple things where we have like deterrence. We don't want eating the same crime. It's like it's not necessarily just to
punish,
satiate the feelings of
exactly.
the person, right? We have like a system that has a multi-purpose.
Yeah.
So, like when it's revenge that you want,
and that's
just about you. It's not about anything else. And then you get the feeling, you get the thing, and you do the thing, and then what?
I think it's Edmund Burke, and oh man, I'm gonna mess this up because it's been so long since I've read him. Edmund Burke, was a rhetorician. There you go. Say that word 5 times fast. Rhetorician. He argued that one of the ways that communities gain a sense of justice is through the fulfillment of punishment of the person that they deem responsible for something. And so a peacemaking
scapegoating.
Perhaps. Yes, he called it scapegoating. I was just about to go there,
sorry.
and you had to literally take my word. No, it's okay. That's okay. No, it's linked. He literally called it the scapegoat, and that communities want to take all frustration, anger onto a particular person that then scapegoats and moves it away. And so Edmund Burke made this argument that communities do this, and it's the way of what he called, I think he called it passivism, like it pacifies the group. Otherwise, they won't be pacified.
Speaking of community,
Man.
On that note,
So much I want to say about
I know. There's a million things, by the way. We'll probably come back to some of these in the coming weeks. And by the way, if our adoring audience listening right now wants to hear more on a specific topic.
What's the question of the day?
Well, the question of the day is how...
Because I feel like we're already on it. And like.
Well, I know, but I want to pick Dwayne's giant, massive gourd on this one today because, again, he's got a very special perspective.
Seconds, I'll be done.
There you go. Oh, not that massive gourd, I guess. No. Our question of the day today is how do we help without hurting? So this kind of speaks to the idea of how do we help as a society? So seeking justice, seeking, to curb the spread of lawlessness, the spread of injustice, and the spread of suffering. It's all linked together. So getting to the idea of justice, you might say, well, we're trying to help by providing justice in this manner, by punishing this person for the wrongs they've done here. The idea that it will help society later on. So this idea came to my mind a couple years ago, this question, after reading the book, When Helping Hurts. Wonderful, wonderful analysis of this idea by Steve Corbett and Brian Finkert, 2 professors at Covenant College in Georgia. Our adult ed class at our congregation, Evergreen Presbyterian, went through it. And it's largely from a Christian mission ministry perspective, but the applications are broad-based across all lines. This idea of we want to help, we want to see how to better others, how to better their situation, how to help them more have shalom, for example, to borrow in peace. Yeah.
Balance. And the idea of shalom is truly like everything's in balance.
Exactly.
Peaceful balance.
Right.
Wholeness. Yeah.
It's literally what like Salem means peace.
Yeah.
The city of peace.
Absolutely. Yeah, so how do we help people to have shalom? But they talk about how sometimes we, especially when you're going cross-culturally, largely, when you're entering as an outside of a particular culture or people group, where you think you're helping, but you're either actually doing more damage than good, or the resources that you are putting towards that effort versus the return on investment is so minimal that we squander resources. So a couple examples they talk about, like in Africa, for example, there have been companies and entrepreneurs over the years that have tried to get textile businesses and clothing businesses started up within Africa itself to provide commerce, jobs, opportunity. But what we do a lot of times in the West is we keep flooding the market with free stuff when we send mission teams with T-shirts and supplies. They're like, why would we buy? We can just wait for the next short-term mission trip to come by. In fact, there's a whole racket of...
So in other words, industry because you're not allowing them to produce it themselves.
Exactly. And I guess there's a whole thing too where people in villages will line up like fake orphans to stay, as mission teams come along that aren't even orphan, they have this whole thing down. And that's not certainly not everybody.
So a quick illustration would be that you're going there to help.
Yes.
With the pretext of I'm helping, which I do have this thought that sometimes maybe short-term trips are more about us. But when we take stuff there, we give things that are valuable. And there's probably is certain times, it's always the question of, did the resources get to where they needed to be?
Yeah.
And you probably don't have a good answer for that. And so the question, so the illustration they would be making is that in this case, you stifled the ability of all these people to create an industry where they could have elevated themselves in their local community and probably created interdependence, which is what an economy is, interdependence, and then grew that economy to a point where they could be independent or like gain wealth and probably slowly better everyone around them. I mean, you stifled that because you went in and you killed the market by giving free stuff away, so people had no incentive.
You gave them fish, so they didn't have to learn how to fish long term.
And I just wonder.
Well, it really before we dive into that,
You're setting it up,
well, I was going to set you up because no, keep wondering. So I mean, there's a lot of examples internationally, and we can dive into that. Oh my goodness! What did you drink this morning?
Is this what happens on podcasts? We just get up and down.
No. I got to go after this. So
old people do podcasts.
Serious.
Next on CNN. Okay.
Oh my! I swear, I'm up like 6 times a night. Like I will not have to pee all evening until I have to lay down for bed, and then it's like it is seriously. Okay. Anyway, so why I particularly wanted to have you on topic about this idea here, Dwayne, is again you have. Through your work with SLF, their goal, I believe, is to again help Salem, the city of Shalom, to truly be a city of peace, to be the healthiest it can possibly be as a community, but to maximize the effectiveness of the resources and the goodwill that people have, because you recognize that again, people can have goodwill and good intentions, but if they don't know how to channel it, it's just wasted effort. And I love the illustration that Sam has used many times, the idea of stuff is good. But stuff is not the ultimate answer. There's a place for stuff. Yeah. Stuff helps, but stuff is not the long-term solution. And how he also does the us's and the thems illustration, whereas, and you can elaborate on this, but basically the idea is we have this viewpoint of we have everything you need. We are the us's, you are the thems, and we're just going to give you everything, and you're going to be grateful that we exist, and you're going to, just come to us and we will do it. We'll give you what you need. We will tell you what you need. We'll do whatever you need versus hey, we all have something to give. And there may be a time where somebody is down here, but our goal is to not have a top-down relationship. It's interdependence, as Richard talked about. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts from your experience, again, doing this much more on the front lines than the two of us. What are some things that you've observed with this idea of, the fact that stuff is good, but stuff is not ultimately the answer, and how we actually help do the most effective good, and maybe just some practical ideas for people interested in getting involved in helping without hurting, particularly within Salem Kaiser.
Yeah.
So I got to go follow in your footsteps.
You guys are smooth in your transitions. He really just did my whole setup, and so.
Okay. Well, I set it up. You knock it down.
Man, this is awesome.
I'm sorry. Share some stories.
Somebody will say, wow, you didn't say anything. I have more questions still. And I think I'll even do this like, let's tie back into what we were talking about earlier kind of thing. But let me ask this top of mind question he just did the setup, right? I wonder, and I'll ask this, but anytime there is simply the giving of stuff to help someone and nothing else outside of a relationship, I think we need to ask why we're doing it. So I'll restate probably better. I think anytime there's just the simple transactional movement of money, things, clothing, whatever, to another human being without some sense of relationship, I think we need to pause and say,
So
why?
you're not a socialist.
Well, I'm not going to go there. I am simply
I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing you.
Man, no, I love that. Actually, that's good.
With no relationship, that's kind of the
There could be, and again, it doesn't mean those should never happen. I just think whenever you have that transaction, and I'm saying that word, then and I'm going to catch you guys' theme of this unexamined life. I spent a lot of time early on in work and ministry and stuff in the community that I would do, unexamining why I was giving things outside of relationship. And so examining that process actually doesn't mean I've stopped doing those pieces, but it does call me to be much more intentional, precise, and pinpoint. And so that's a starting question I would have too, is why we do that. I do want to draw us back to our conversation earlier. Oh, now I get to rephrase it as Garrett walks in. I'm going to rephrase the question I threw out there. And I just said this. Anytime we're giving things, stuff to another human being outside of relationship, I think we need to stop and ask why we're doing it.
Outside of relationship.
Outside of a relation of and when I say intimacy, right? Just like understanding and getting to know another human being and seeing them face to face, hearing a story, knowing a name, that might be 30 seconds or that might be 30 years. So again, there's qualifiers in that. But anytime there's just simple transaction, I don't know. We just need to ask why we're doing it, and there may be good reason to. And then I'll say this, and maybe I shut up for a moment too. But our original conversation started. My thought was moving us towards like if an answer to injustice is honor, I think this applies very much to this question. When helping hurts, or when does it hurt? When does it help? But if my goal is to honor another human being, that has a much different outcome than me wanting to fix another human being. So I tend to think whenever I make the move to fix, the outcome does not necessarily end up at the best place.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, fixing says it almost has attached with it I'm better, or you could say I'm okay and you're not.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing my okayness to you, rather than honor is I'm giving you dignity and value and worth and appreciation in spite of your lack of being right, fixed, or whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fixing piece assumes that I have a certain level of I don't have the same need for fixing this, right? Like I have something that can fix your problem.
So I've got a question. So since Garrett kind of did the setup, have you seen that in your life? And have you maybe even personally mistakenly hurt when you meant to help?
Oh man. Yes. How much time do we have? I have a lot. The one that came to my mind
20 minutes.
I'll just tell one. When I was doing campus ministry in Texas, Abilene, Texas. Shout out to Abilene. So
Abilene,
love it.
Abilene Christian, is that the school?
Yeah. Great school. This is a good experience. Good barbecue. I remember.
I'm hungry. Don't hit me with barbecue. I have an Adam's Rib gift card in my pocket though, so may have hit that one. Yes.
I remember I got our college students together and I said, hey, we're going to go serve at a local mission. And it was well intended. It was all great. And we did some good things. I'm not minimizing it. It was so good. In fact, I didn't even have it in mind. We gave good respite and good break to some regular volunteers that day. That was really helpful. I mean, it really was good. I just remember, and it crushed me, when one of the guys comes through the line and he literally looks me in the eye he just said, this is great. He's like, you're not going to be here next week. And he just kept on going. And I'm like, and I wanted to disagree with him. I wanted to say, well, wait a second.
We'll be back. No.
But he was right. In everything he said, he was right. And I wasn't back the next week. And so I essentially, I just made a commodity out of his homelessness and me giving a transaction. And it was good. And I'm not saying people, if people do that, there's a good purpose in this, and it can be okay. But that moment crushed me. And actually, it brought me to start examining how I need to do this differently. And it took me a while to probably make some changes, but that's the first thing that came to my mind. And I just... Yeah, and he didn't have a name to me that day, right? I never got his name. I never heard his story. I never did anything.
But you'll never forget what he said.
Oh my goodness, right? He made the most humanizing comment he could to me, and I still never humanized the guy very well until years later.
Yeah, so recognizing, again, that building that I love the word interdependency that you talk about in any system, the idea that we each have something to bring to the table. So exactly. But even in serving and helping, it's the idea of, again,
we're dependent upon farmers to feed us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We have mutual interest in helping one another. But even in quote unquote serving, where you might be in a position where you are better fit to serve somebody in this capacity, but it's like you talk about, you came into the mission there and served, and you did some good work, and that was great. But long term, is that what is going to lift people caught in systematic or in long-term systems and long-term cycles of abuse and poverty and suffering out of that system? Or is it some degree of relational capacity that goes beyond just a transaction? You know?
It gets so complicated talking about this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Daniel has studied psychology quite a bit, but a lot of, sometimes when you're trying to help someone, and we were talking about mental health, and let's say the problem isn't just that they're in a bad position. So there are people, let's say, who get into a bad position, and what I would call the fundamental safety nets of society, which I believe start with the family, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So someone who's devoid of a family
who
can catch them, it's left to the state, which is generally a harder catch.
Yeah.
It's not an impossible catch, it's just harder because you don't have close friendships. You don't have people who can house you locally. And so sometimes, the issue is just we need to provide enough resources and enough tools to move forward. So I got a call from my brother-in-law. He told me about a friend of his who was homeless in the Salem area and needed some help, needed rides places. So I started helping, started doing everything I could. He had his thing was he couldn't read that well, so job applications were very difficult. I took him to the Goodwill Industries. I took him to Job Source.
Do I know this person?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was thinking of a different person.
Anyway, just really worked with them. And then one day they disappear. I didn't hear from them for 9 months. Saw him at a park. Wow. Yeah. It was just like, where did you go?
Yeah.
And, so there was this wonder of the first thought that came to mind is what did I do wrong? Where did I, I tried to do everything I could. And so I think there's a deeper complex of something, which is that, is this a pattern in someone's life, or is there something else that I can't possibly fix that is going there? And so, if the safety net is just hold someone long enough, there's another guy who lived with us for a while, and all he needed was a safety net for an amount of time to save up money and do all that type of stuff, and he's back on his feet. Yeah. He needed that.
Yeah.
And then that puts him into a position. And honestly, before we got to him, there were, he was at some of the local shelters. But the safety net prevented him from going all the way to rock bottom.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so there's a balance, and I think this is where the helping hurts. It has to be really clearly defined about what the person actually needs.
Yeah.
And take that concept, and again, I'm applying it to earlier conversations even to now, but if you start to think of safety nets, and maybe I'll make a governmental statement, but again, this is less political as much as that the role of government to somehow shape, help, guide, right? Whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
So suddenly the place of boundaries, laws, reforms, institutions, like they are all safety nets to create a structure in which people can now thrive. Right, but that in itself is not the end goal, right? Like that's great, and it goes back to we can reset the system. We need something else inside the system itself, and that's where call it honor, call it human dignity, call it faith, call it. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can now shape that, but it's got to happen somehow.
Well, it's called love, and love is when someone loves you when they have your back, when they're not out to get you, they're not and that sometimes in the context of being vulnerable, it's important for someone to feel safe.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so honoring them or giving them dignity could be the idea of getting them to feel safety.
And on the idea of, I love you guys talking about the idea of dignity, because this gets into, a contemporary issue of many people being forced out of work due to COVID. And not being able to work, not being able to produce, not being able to earn. And I read a really good article. I've referenced it. It was on the Federalist, and it was in the midst of all the reopening protests. Some people criticizing people who are wanting to reopen society, saying, "Well, you just care about money, you just care about your 401k." And I've said, if you're out there demanding that everything be reopened so that you can get a haircut or you can buy your second house,
it did help the richest man in, I think he's the richest man in
America.
America.
He's gained like
Jeff
20
Bezos?
billion since this all
Yeah,
started.
it hurt all the poor people, but it definitely helped Amazon.
Another conversation for when I hear
Not that I hate Amazon. I'm just saying,
Pretty sure he's
I got a new weed whacker spindle coming
He's
today.
the richest man in the world.
He's the richest man in the world, and he their profit margin was skyrocketed because everyone decided to buy from there instead of local vendors.
And they're hiring a ton. Anyway,
I think you could make the case historically through the history of the world, the richest individuals always profited on
crisis.
I mean, I'm just making that up, but I think, as I said, I think you could make that case.
Yeah, you could. Yeah,
and I'm not saying they're villains
No.
necessarily. I'm saying if you start to look at things, crisis evokes a lot of
provides
shifting
opportunity.
changes.
Yeah, that is back to my main point. No, it's this again. There's 1,000 rabbit trails, but he talked about this idea that there's this archetype of there are these evil, greedy people who want to go back and make more money, and he says that to look at it just purely through economic terms is missing the point. And he said there's more to people being able to work than just earning money. He talks about the idea of there's dignity, there's honor in that. You might see somebody who has the restaurant shut down as, oh, well, they're just not getting money and I'll go back to work for money. They might view it as, hey, this is a restaurant my family started. Many times when you came here to America for the first time and that you earned something, you created something, you built something, there's a family legacy there that is on the verge. There's dignity. Your father's restaurant, in Seattle, I mean, that's more than just income to him. That's a passion that.
So I asked Daniel to look something up. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
So the idea that people are just greedy, and I think is
Exactly.
statistically
Misleading.
misplaced.
Yeah.
Completely
Well,
misplaced.
So the idea that we'll just sit back and we'll just send you money, and again, there's a time and a place for stuff. The idea of a safety net is meant to be there to help people from hitting rock bottom. It's not meant to say this net's so good, I'm just going to stay in this net versus trying to bring myself back up. And I'll wrap up here and give you guys a point, but I just thought that was very, appealing that it's more than just, hey, I'm not getting my money. Or somebody said, okay, we'll give you money so you can live. It's more than that. It's I want to be dignified in the work that I do. I'm passionate and love what I do, and I'm not able to do it.
Middle ground in the it's the catch-22 of it. You want to try to honor people, but you also know people can be dumb.
Oh yeah,
you want people.
That's what people do best. Is be dumb.
Well,
would agree.
I would imagine that a conversation I would have liked to have seen, which I don't know if it happened, so I shouldn't say this. I was in the COVID reopening meeting that we had with the Marion County Commissioner.
Oh, the faith leaders meeting.
It was just a reopening one. It was one of many. But what didn't happen there, I don't know if it happened in another meeting, but it seemed like
it was all about how many numbers of people should be able to meet together. I thought there should have been a conversation, and maybe it's on me that I didn't speak up. Can we open and ask people to be responsible about it? Can we put some measures in place that would really, like social distancing, extra sanitation, wiping down surfaces after every time someone uses them, some basic things like that, where we could get businesses back open and get people feeling like they're going to.
Yeah.
And what I like about that statement, whether or not you, this is what I think. Slight rabbit trail, but I'll bring this. I think we, and you just stop me if I need to.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay.
Go for it.
We, in America, live on a lot of years of behavioral focus, right? Like we, I can blame the Puritans. I can blame a lot. It doesn't matter. We put emphasis on behaviors. And so when we bring up, your question doesn't just go to a quick behavioral answer. It's trying to dig into a little bit of why. Can we do this in quote unquote the gray zone? Can we figure out some ways around it? Yeah. I'm thinking with relation to this question, when I come across someone who's an urban camper and they're flying a sign for money, most people, right? We're looking for, give me a quick behavior that I can do. Do I give them money or not? Do I take them food or not? Right? Like, should I give them, all good questions. I can't just we can't give one answer, right? If I know that person by name and I see them at church on Sundays, I might give them $5. Knowing they may, I don't know.
Right, they might use it wrong still, whatever.
Maybe, but I have there's some semblance of relationship. I know them. I will see them. I will follow up.
Yeah.
If I don't know somebody, I guess what I'm saying is,
it's easier to disconnect.
We're looking for the quick. I think a lot of people want to know, well, do I give it or not? Well, I don't know, right? Like, taking the time to get to know someone, maybe taking that person out to lunch is the thing to do. Maybe not. I mean, there's so many questions. I just think if we get too hung up on behaviors, we miss the heart questions we're trying to dig up, right? Like, maybe me helping won't hurt, actually. Maybe it will be the best gift. But pan this out, right? Maybe me taking a crew of people down to volunteer for 3 hours will be the best thing we can possibly do, because there might be volunteers and a bunch of people that need a break. That's okay. That is okay to do. I don't know. So I just want to call it out. Like it's okay to dig deeper into these whys.
And that gets to the idea too that we talk about not reinventing the wheel and connecting with the man on the ground. Of I wouldn't presume to say I'm going to go out and talk to these homeless people asking for money on the street and say I'm going to know everything there is to know about them. I'm going to talk to you guys. Where if you know it personally, there's a good chance you know somebody who does. Or the hope dealers, People street ministers, people like that. Of like, hey. Yeah. You guys are on the front lines of this. You know more than I do. What do you need from us? Versus saying, I'm going to go do my own thing and just reinvent the wheel. Find somebody who's already doing it and say, how can we best serve you guys? What do these people actually need?
More like information, which is like, it would be really interesting to see someone do a broad case study on how to deal with like issues of poverty and other stuff like that. Per city, per state, and see what that shows us, and kind of figure out what things actually just work. Can we disassociate from it's not my tribe, so I won't do it, versus what actually does work? What gets people out of poverty?
Oh, that's a great question.
Not keeps them in it, but what gets them out of poverty.
Well, I mean, that's interesting, because one of the things that could work politically for the federal government, keeping people in poverty but giving them a welfare state, ensures that they get voted for, essentially. And so, federally speaking, you just give like this huge, blanket state of welfare that just keeps them there, doesn't really get them out of it. You've got a political motive behind that as well. Yeah. So can we get away from that? Can we undermine that system? And I think that
system. I've wondered this. We talk about. Sam, our executive director, does so good talking about. Just this neighborhood focus.
Yeah.
I wonder. And he's wondered. We all wondered. What would it look like to tackle some of these things on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis?
Yeah.
And here's a for example. Right now in downtown Salem, the Union Gospel Mission is doing a phenomenal job. They're doing some great work. It's needed. And what they're building a new mission. All this, it's great. if we expand and put another building, another thing right downtown, we're not really dispersing that, right? We're consolidating in these areas. And the problem is, I think when that happens, right, we lose the human connection. So it's probably not going to be a popular idea, but what would it look like if we dispersed that type of help? Not the UGM. Let them stay with it. They're doing great. But any additional things, what would it look like if we help disperse it throughout the city? And it becomes, let me break it down on a really tangible level. What if, and in our context is often working with churches, what if a church of 100 people said, hey, we would love to advocate for 3 people?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're just getting to know them. And we may add more people over time, but we just want those 3 people. We're going to love on them. Great. And again, I don't mean to like divvy it up in a, you're just a number, but in essence, we take this relational management into this level of like, oh, we can do that. We can surround.
It's not so daunting. We're like, hey, we can manage that. We can. Yeah.
But that has problems. That will have problems over time too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's the answer.
Well, it's kind of like, our church had a couple, we're a small church, about 120, we've actually doubled since we showed up, but still relatively small. But we have several families of Syrian refugees we adopted and say, hey, this is your family, will you guys connect with them? It's like, hey, we can handle, and, help them to get situated, help them find a place to live. I did the Syrian suppers at Evergreen a couple years ago, and we're able to raise money. They're trying to get a food cart they can do full time to earn a living, get them, coming here and enable them the resources to provide a service to the community that people want to exchange currency for some yummy, delicious Syrian food here, and enable them to get on their own feet to where they're not in that cycle of dependence. Yeah. So you're right. If you just boil it down on that, well, and that again gets down to this idea of actually being forced to get to know and connect with your neighbor, those around you, even whether those you physically live next to or those you work with, those you commerce with.
If they have the wrong
political sign in their front yard, then no.
Shouldn't
then they're the worst people ever.
No.
And you have no obligation whatsoever to be decent to them.
Save that one. Yeah, and when I do that though, here's the cool thing that happens is
that's a joke, by the way, for all those listening. That's a joke. We want you.
Disclaimer.
We want you to be neighborly to people. Absolutely.
Amen.
But what happens when we're neighborly, right? I may realize the quote unquote dependent family or people. Oh, actually, they have something I need. It moves, and then I'm doing this. Hey Sam, if you're watching someday, he always does this. Oh, it's not us, them. I'm putting my hands. There's this together, and suddenly I'm like, wait a second. You have an ability, skill set, and strength I don't have. My goodness. And now I know you, and now I trust you.
You know how to fix my car engine. I have no idea.
But how do you do that? Wow. And so now we're doing I would say shalom economics, right? Not just money, but we're now economically weaving together.
Yeah. We got a couple minutes left.
It
So
also
I'll let you
is
gentlemen have the
devoid
final words.
of, when you know your neighbor personally, it's devoid of the, did I make sure you agree with everything that I agree with so that I can interact with you, which is not.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the basis by which we interact. Unfortunately, I feel like social media is moving us there, but I think that's really sad.
Yeah.
Because what it should be is, what can I learn from my neighbor? How can I help them? How can I, and there is a discussion for all of the other stuff too, but I think that, primarily it should be neighbor focused.
Should be, yeah. Dwayne, we're slightly over time already, but I just want to give you kind of the final word. If there's any shout outs you want to give or any just practical, tangible advice you can give to people who may be hearing this saying, I'm interested in how I can participate in these shalom economics. Again, I'm going to coin so many good terms, but that's a great idea of how they can participate or how they can connect with you guys about taking the next step.
I would just be I'll keep it really short and simple to say, humanize these topics, right? Humanize the questions, gather someone's name, gather their story, get to know them. Really is that simple. You and I, we all may say, oh man, well, we're just going to be on two different sides. That may be okay. I may realize that but we are not probably going to work together very often. You now have a face and a name, and that is different, I think. And so I would say that humanize these issues and make them, have them a face and a name.
Face and name. And now as we're coming, is that like K-Woo?
You guys always end with a song.
Should. That's maybe a terrible idea, maybe a brilliant idea. I don't know.
Would be humanize your neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Humanize people who are maybe on social media. Humanize the people that you might disagree with. Humanize even the homeless community, the people working in government, the people working in businesses. Because you brought up a point, which is, it could be easy to view them of like, you've misrepresented an entire group of people, and so that's just really important in general. And thus, we can't solve the world's problems through hashtags and memes.
No,
they are fun. But
what if you could call, this is regardless of a political view here, because the president over time will change over the next 40 years, right? What if you could contact the president and say, hey, I realize you have a name and a face and a family, and I just wonder what the conversation would even look like. Even if I don't like it, it would change.
It does.
And we can't do that.
It's very easy to have disdain for a group. It's a lot harder to have disdain for an individual when you meet them. Sometimes it's easier, I guess, if you just meet somebody you think you'll like and they turn out to be the world's
It's far easier to hate than it is to love.
Exactly. It takes way less time. Well, and to your point, and I swear we will wrap up here. Although Jessica hasn't texted me yet, so I don't know if she's on her way with the boys yet. If you're listening to this,
do you want me to wrap it up? I can land this plane.
I was just going to say my final point of we live in one of the luxuries of living in the richest nation in the history of the planet is that we have an abundance of resources, and a lot of times it's easier to give money than to give our time. I've often said if somebody says, hey, you can either wake up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday and kind of help me move all day, or you could send $30 so I can pay for movers, I'm tempted to say, hey, here's the $30 versus, hey,
it depends on how much time you have available.
And that's true.
We have different amounts of time available to us depending on our season in life, our age, all sorts of factors. I think that's it's just it can be varied and wide. But anyway, I hope everyone listening enjoyed the show. We really are trying to get into important issues that I think affect everybody, and I think also put on display what real. I don't know what the right word is for this, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. I think the idea of like a tolerance that isn't just about agreeing with people, but actually hearing other people out. And so I think that's really, really important. Put your money where your mouth is, and so practice real tolerance. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoy, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Same time next week.
Adios.